Just a quick word before we start this podcast. At the time of release, I'm preparing to run 10k, 10 kilometres on May the 22nd, 2022. I'm trying to raise as much money as I can to send over to Ukraine to provide medical aid and assistance. So please go to my GoFundMe page. Toby's wheezing and groaning for 10k for Ukraine. There's a link in the blurb, that's easier, and there's links pinned to my Twitter pages. That would be really, really helpful if you could send even the smallest amount. Every little, as they say, helps. Thanks very much, and here's the podcast. Welcome to this special episode of Happy Times and Places. Special? Why? Because it's filmed abroad. Does that make a difference? No, it just means that the cast get to sleep with each other. Who are the cast? That's just me, Toby Hayden, seeing if I can guess my special guest's favourite things about a Doctor Who story. He's filming all his stuff at home. He doesn't get to come on the trip.
My name's Matt Hayden. I train people in conflict management, teamwork, communication skills, cultural diversity, things like that. And all of these fascinating topics, I think, are examined in immense detail in my choice of story. It's The Two Doctors, and I'll be fascinated to see what you think of it.
Well, hello, everybody. I hope you're hungry for more delights from the Doctor Who story, The Two Doctors. We have on the menu the thoughts of my good friend Matt Hayden, who isn't known to Doctor Who fandom. He's just a chum of mine. Nothing just about that. And also one of those delightful people you meet in life who, Matt, is very knowledgeable about a lot of things. So even though he's not a Doctor Who fan, he could still name doctors and stories. And, you know, he's the sort of guy that can spot Ronald Rad from 20 paces without, as I say, considering himself an expert, because he also knows about, well, no, he's a movie buff. Sure, he's a movie buff. So, but he knows about lots of other things as well. But yeah, he knows enough about Doctor Who without ever feeling the need to buy a DVD or anything. So he said he fancied doing The Two Doctors, which I'm very happy about, because there's not enough Colin Baker love in Happy Times and Places at the moment. I've had a few more. A lot of them have been claimed now. It took a while, but actually nobody else has recorded their thoughts, bar Emma Reeves, who did Time Lash really early on in the process. And now Matt with The Two Doctors. So let's see what is in store with episode 2. So you see, I've just turned up the... I love this music, and that the music is on the DVD menu. But I'm going to have to go to episode selection, because we're for episode 2, or part 2, to give it its correct nomenclature. And I'm going to press select in 3, 2, 1... go. Worked first time. But of course there's a pause. So as the Starfield kicks in. Well, thanks for listening to this. I like The Two Doctors. I think I was always going to be predisposed to like it. I'm sure I mentioned in the last episode, which I recorded a while ago. Sorry, there's been a gap between recordings. Probably a longer gap between recordings than between you listening. Because you get one a week. But I was predisposed to like this because it had old stuff in it. I'm curious about the past. I listened to a Fleetwood Mac song that just came on the radio the other day, and it reminded me, it was one of the few tapes I had. My friend Duncan did it for me on cassette. And it reminded me of my teenage years, which weren't necessarily particularly happy because they were full of all those teenage worries. And I wasn't terribly happy at home, but I had Doctor Who as an island. But I think I did feel a sort of thrill of potential of those, though, because there's something very alive about being a teenager, and that, you know, crossing over into the threshold of being an adult when you can decide the things that you want to do, and you suddenly don't have to do as you're told all of the time, and the feel that one was on the cusp of that whilst still living at home. I remember being very exciting. But how old was I? And listening to that piece of music, I suddenly got very emotional. I got very teary. The past is a curious place where it's a sort of safe refuge because we know we got through it, but also we miss it because it's gone. And I think I look back now and wish I'd tried to be happier. because actually, adulthood is not just about doing what you want. There's so many other different pressures that you have to bear, and actually you're never freer than when you're a teenager, free of responsibilities. And I wish I didn't perhaps enjoy. I did enjoy my teenage years. Well, it was a mixture of joy and angst, which is very much what watching Doctor Who was like during this period. I loved Doctor Who, but was also very aware that it wasn't as good as it used to be. Whereas, of course, now I view this era the same as any other. There are highs and lows. There are bits I like about each story and bits I don't. One of the things that I've not quite got to grips with is why Jamie has dressed as a garage mechanic and turned into whatever he was trying to do to Perry there. It's amazing how sort of casually abusing young women. Well, certainly poor old Perry, she goes through it, is sort of thrown around as random jeopardy in this, but it was pretty. I remember my sister sort of, I think looking slightly askance at the way that we didn't know it was Jamie at the time, but the feral creature wrapped its leg around Perry in a certain way. I always thought these things were good. The way that, again, Matt mentioned Colin's sort of grappling with the Gumblejack and convincing you that it was life. The way he applied those things, which I assume are a reverse needle. It's an old trick. The needle goes back into the shaft, but the way they stick to his neck and the needle goes in, they looked real to me, and I even though I knew that they couldn't be, it's just a nice little touch when Doctor Who pays attention to the little details. I remember Russell T Davies on the commentary of Army of Ghosts talking about not being happy with a particular button, and they had to on the ghosty machine thing that the Doctor made, that they actually went back and did little reshoots for the close-ups of the buttons, and that sort of attention to detail is breathtakingly impressive and indicative of his grasp of how the show works and how the show sometimes it exists in the minutiae, and you carry off a little moment like that, and you just help to sell the dream, and you foul up a little moment like that, and it can make the cynics or the suspension of disbelief more difficult. It can harm the cynics, those predisposed to not like this stuff. But I nonetheless I do feel that Jamie is perhaps a trifle more sophisticated this time on the TARDIS than to turn into whatever it is he turns into for the sake of the cliffhanger, because there's no other explanation other than he's been left alone for a bit on a space station, so he gets changed, and as I say, the first thing he thinks to do is try to molest the first person that comes along, who typically, of course, is Perry, for whom seemingly molestation was part of the job description when she signed up for companion college. Anyway, mixed a metaphor then, really. Going to college isn't a job, is it? So, well, look, this is all off the top of my head. I'm so sorry. And I have to say that I think the story is sort of at its least interesting in these well, they're not ventilation shafts, are they? They're massive, whatever they are, this infrastructure. But I remember not minding at the time, because just Jamie being there was exciting enough. He was a link to the past, and I remember feeling so lucky that we got Fraser Hines, because he's only in the Five Doctors for a moment, and it was like, oh well, now they've got him, and I have to say, Fraser throws himself into any Doctor Who event with gusto, and I think there's lots of lovely little moments he has in this story. And look at that, it's coming out again. I think that is a lovely, and it pulls at his skin. I think those little sticky injection things are absolutely fabulous. They might actually go on my list of things that are the best things about the story. And that's not because I'm damning with faint praise, because there's lots I like about this. she looks like she's wearing psychedelic tinfoil, does poor old Perry. It's a good job they're not going somewhere really hot where she can bake. Oscar and Anita. I do like Oscar and James Saxon. I don't think there are enough out of work actors in Doctor Who. Well, there's lots of out of work actors in Doctor Who, but obviously they're not out of work when they're in Doctor Who. But I think I think I mentioned last time, Oscar is like you hope actors are, but actually most actors aren't. I used to think that the profession was, had it's always described as people being, having particular propensity for squabbling or vanity and all of the and backstabbing and all of those things. And it's it's only when my mum came home from working in a staff room, or my sister worked for a charity, and you actually discover those sorts of characters are in every single workplace. It's just that people are interested in what actors do, so they hear about it more. So I think actors get an unfairly bad reputation. I like the company of actors. It's one of the things that made me want to be an actor, not so much the work as the company, whiling away the hours, drinking and smoking, neither of things I'm allowed to do anymore. And of course, you actually realise that, as I say, that actors are no different to anybody else. Perhaps they just know a few more stories about backstage shenanigans or programs that you like, so that's why I like them, because I like what they're talking about. But I felt it was a really curious thing, that sort of happy, sad, melancholy, nostalgia frisson that I got from a song that reminded me of and I could feel the warmth. We had a kitchen with an Aga, so I stayed in the kitchen because that was the warmest part of this old cold house we lived in, and I can the cassette tape on the tape deck that I had that had been my birthday present, and I haven't listened to that music for ages. And I suppose I don't get it quite the same with Doctor Who, because watching this now, I can remember watching my bootleg VHS, because I took all my videos with me to university. I had a trunk with all my Doctor Who's on, so I kept watching this. I don't necessarily associate this with a particular time when it was first on, although I can, as I say, I can remember watching it in the sitting room at my house when I was a kid. And actually my mum broke a cardinal rule. I was always allowed to watch Doctor Who. That was sort of taken as read. Doctor Who was my thing. But she must have been in a bad mood with me or something, because, and I think it might have been this episode, it's when Patrick Troughton's being interrogated by Stike. I think she came in and told me I had to move my shoes from the hall, and it was like, well, can I not just wait till Doctor Who's finished? No, you have to do it now. So I actually missed a tiny bit of the episode because I had to do a thing that she was annoyed about. And I remember thinking that was unusual, because actually watching Doctor Who was the one thing that I was sort of allowed to do. This is Colin has a speech. I think they should have given Colin a few more speeches. He's very good at this whimsical's wrong, melancholy, whimsicoly sort of monologues that he does very well, and he's very good at the action too, and keeping the pacing up, and the sort of peeved panic that he does. Now he's seeing everybody, it's a trap, it's not true, all the deaths were faked. But that's quite a nice little. That's quite a nice little plot sleight of hand, or that gives the Doctor the clue to the next bit. No, he's not Jamie McCrimmon. Yes, he is. Lovely. And I like the fact, because I'm sure Colin and Fraser get on, because they're I would say they're actors cut from a similar cloth. And so I think they bounce off each other rather nicely. which I like, because I like the idea that a modern Doctor likes an old companion, and that affection still lingers in future generations. I think that's very important. I remember getting very cross with Peter Davison at the end of the Five Doctors, saying, "I'm certainly not the man I was, thank goodness." Going, "How dare you? How dare you be rude about the past?" The past is so... I got a message from a Doctor Who fan, a young Doctor Who fan, I talked to on Facebook, who's been to see my show and things. He was talking about he still holds sort of upset at the people who bullied him in the past for liking Doctor Who, because it's an easy target, isn't it? Especially when nobody's watching it. A plot. Well done, Fraser. That's very funny. I love the little touches that Fraser Hines gives to Jamie, sort of going, he's a bit thick, but it's delightful, and he judges it perfectly. I think it's pitched perfectly. And this young friend of mine is still so upset about the injustice of people using his Doctor Who fandom to bully him. And I see people online sort of bullying people or being mean about people for the way that they like Doctor Who, whether it's a modern fan who gets a bit carried away about the particular things that have upset them, which modern fans seem to do, and that's fine. I think being sensitive, there's nothing wrong with being sensitive, and I think it all comes from I think it slightly overcompensates, but it all comes from a desire for the world to be a better place. But my main sort of thing is, why do you care what anybody thinks about what you think about Doctor Who? And for my young friend, it was because he was still sort of holding on to what people did in the past and the injustice. Well, the injustice only exists if you give it power, and those people that were bullying him have probably forgotten. So the past... So it's interesting because Patrick Troughton, here he is, was in it, was somehow a better version of One Doctor Who because it had got an old thing in it. Well, that's fruitless as well, to try and recapture the past and say, well, if only we could get back to there. And it blinded me to what was great about this. Oh man, I still liked Colin Baker, but this was somehow given more gloss because it was from the old days, which I hadn't seen, so I didn't even know that they were better, but because I couldn't see them, and because they weren't associated with me and my time, and that's dangerous folly. But we do that, don't we? We look back to a golden age politically, anything, and I think that's very, very foolish, and also bad things from the past are only given power if you let them affect you, and certainly what other people think of Doctor Who, I don't care. No offence, but I don't care what you think about Doctor Who. We can have a lovely chat about it, of course, but I don't. I'm perfectly secure in my love for Doctor Who and what I love about it. It's fine. And the things I don't love about it, I don't mind, because they're part of a greater whole. Do like this music. I don't think I can vote for the music because I think that was all part of the package of what I liked about the last one. I don't, however, like the Sontaran costumes. Lynx had tight-fitting leather. Look at this. I mean, I know it's not Tinsley, but it looks like it's slightly... It's not shiny in the way that leather is shiny, like Lynx's leather is shiny. It's slightly more showbiz shiny. It's slightly more like it could be on the catwalk with in a light end show with Colin Baker's costume. I'm glad. I'm almost glad the Sontarans never appeared in Doctor Who again in the classic series, because they get gradually worse as they appear, and taller. Clinton Grain's about to come as Stike, and he's a giant, nasty, brutish, and short. They're supposed to be, and I think they recapture the shortness in the modern series very well. So presumably, if they'd appeared again, they'd have had even worse masks, really, really rattly neck armour. And they'd be played by Andre the Giant and Jacob Rees-Mogg. He would. Oh God, he'd be very good as one of the gentlemen in Buffy, wouldn't he? I do like these characters. I think the dynamic between Dastari, the scientist, Jacqueline Pearce, who I sort of took for granted because she was Servalan, and it's only sort of considering her and watching her performance now. And I think the last time I watched it, I remember going, "Oh, she's actually really good." And if you take away from the fact that she's Servalan, so this performance was quite familiar to me because of her vocal patterns and her poise and that sort of that longing, that forlorn, sensual longing that she puts into everything. You sort of go, oh, well, I've seen this because I've seen Servalan, but actually within the confines of this being in a Doctor Who, I think she gives an excellent performance. John Stratton, good for you, go with gusto, chewing, I think, damsons out of the neck of a rat. And I love the way he does the sort of, he really is, and there's the slight limp that he's got, and he's just a horrible thing, isn't he? But I buy him to in the way that he's sort of caressing the body and can you see the lump in his chest there? That's his. I think that's his. Is it Benson Hedges or Marlborough? I can't remember what he spoke, but that's his fags and his lighter that he would never have too far. Yeah, I love the way he spits that. But yeah, he was a chain smoker, I believe. I mean, God, he was only 65 when he died. That's, but yeah, he wouldn't be too far away from his cigarettes. So that's what he's got stuffed down the front of his shirt. I love him. I wrote to him, but I wrote to him care of his agent, and I don't know if it was ever passed on. But I never heard back because, yes, he was Captain Potter in Quatermass in the Pit, the romantic lead. The young hero, and here he is as a... so what, Quatermass of the Pit was 58, 59, 69, 79. So it's 25, 26 years later. But it seemed like, I mean, the gulf between those two things seemed extraordinary. Quatermass of the Pit was the hallowed days of black and white, unreachable, fusty, ancient, and this was, modern, colourful Doctor Who. This is probably 85, 95, 2005. This is further away now than Quatermass in the Pit was when this was on. Oh my goodness, that makes me feel ancient. This can't be as old as Quatermass in the Pit. Oh God. I mean, it was honestly like another world that was only inhabited by ghosts. And it was really weird because my assumption when I was writing to Quatermass people that was most people were dead because the leads were and everything like that. So you assumed, and John Stratton was one of the few alive. Actually, at the time I was writing to people in the late 80s, loads of people were still alive from Quatermass of the Pit, and I now wish I'd written to all of them. I've had the pleasure of encountering a few antediluvian fogey. That's a nice line. Antediluvian is good, but I don't like this bit at all. Sorry. If anything happens to myself, I do wish you'd stop mixing personal pronouns, says Perry, as if that's something he's been doing all of the time. It's a really bad sort of sitcom line that Nicola Bryant does her best with, but it's I would have I'd have lost that in the edit myself. The actors do their best, but it's not a good piece of writing. So I know I'm supposed to accentuate the positive, and I do like the majority of this, but I don't like that bit. One of the Animode group, yes, I like the way that Patrick Troughton does that. It's just recovering, and Lawrence Payne has such dignity, doesn't he? And here we have what's John Stratton eating now? Oh, he's got a big bone. He's having a whale of a time, and I adore him. I wish I'd had the pleasure. I asked Colin about him, and Colin said that he was a nice man who was really happy to be in Doctor Who, so that's nice. And Colin Baker was a big fan of Quatermass in the Pit when he was a kid. This is Clinton Grain as Field Marshal Stike, who I think is excellent. Now, I used to hate the mouths. There's a poster of Stike in one of the Doctor Who magazines, and it seemed to me to emphasise how he's slightly lopsided and now his mouth is a inflexible thing. But actually, again, the last time I watched this, even though the lips don't move in the way that Kevin Lindsay's lips move so brilliantly as Link's, and it seems to be part of the same face, I actually think the lips aren't bad, even though the lips of the mask don't move at all, and it's the made-up lips underneath. I had been expecting to not think they were any good, but actually it's a good melding, and I think you get a great performance from Clinton Grain's eyes, but I do think the mask isn't as flexible or as good or as organic as that original Lynx. Now, I know I'm comparing it to one of the best Doctor Who mask / makeup / costumes ever, which I think Lynx is, but it does seem a bit mad that these things went downhill. 13 years later they can't do it as well as they once did, and it's just the loose fitting of the costume. That again, that Lynx is so compact, and so he looks like a military unit. The fact that the costume is a bit rumpled, it just seems wrong. I find it amusing now that every monster costume has to be this sort of ribbed latex, where you can, the costume itself has ribs, and they're of a particular type, which I'm sure will date in 20 years' time. But at least they fit. Do you know what I mean? At least they and I think in clinging and being tight, they compact. They do the job they are supposed to be doing. Daniel Hacienda. Oh, and isn't this one of the false cliffhangers? Does he say, surely you are joshing us, officer, as well? I like joshing. Now, I've got a feeling this is the cliffhanger. When she says, of course, this way, I think that's the false cliffhanger in the American version when they split the episode in half. I'm sure in Doctor Who magazine it says, yes, the Doctor asks if they could show them, and Anita says, yes, it's this way. And you go, that's because it's 25 minutes in, or whatever, 22 and a half minutes in. Oh, I bet you were glued to your seats, America. Shepton Mallet throughout the war. Mandan gun, was it? No. Oh no, it was Sylvia Coleridge, wasn't it? It was Amelia Ducas manned an Akak gun at Folkestone. But yes, Shepton Mallet. It's just the sound. Shepton Mallet sounds so sort of beautifully parochial. It is sometimes giving a British place name can have a certain sort of tawdry charm. Shepton Mallet. I've never been no apologist to anybody from Shepton Mallet, but there's a brilliant bit in The Office where Ricky Gervais's David Brent is talking about places, and and that's said in Slough, which in itself has an onomatopoeic sort of dowdiness about it. But he talks about Winnersh. Winner's the way that he pronounces it as well. It's great how just a place name with a certain emphasis can be so funny and evocative. And actually, of course, The Meaning of Lift, Douglas Adam and John Lloyd's book, where they take place names and ascribe meanings for things that we don't have words for, is a genius idea, and I think one of the best books ever read, and very, very funny. If you've never read The Meaning of Liff, it's got a Doctor Who link because it's Douglas Adams. You will not go wrong enjoying that. I like this. Patrick Troughton does so well. He spends the whole episode tied up. Troughton's very good at being truthful and funny, but he's driving the drama as well, all whilst tied up or strapped down. And he's very Simon Cowell in the trouser department, isn't he? They're going right up to his midriff. I do like Robert Holmes's dialogue. Although, as I say, I can sort of understand people that have problems with this paean to vegetarianism, which also indulges in the most grotesque imagery and dialogue and incidents that it possibly can. And I'm troubled by Dastari. I think Lawrence Payne does it very well, but he's a sort of conscience-stricken scientist. Unless he wants to, it'll hurt me more than it hurts you. What gives you that idea? So unless he wants to give a witty response. Oh crumbs. I like oh crumbs. I think that might have been the bit that I missed, because did my sister tell me he said oh crumbs, and I was sad to have missed it. Anyway, so I missed a little bit of this until I could see it many, many years later, because I'd left my shoes in the hall. God, it's horrible being a kid, isn't it? How old was I when this was on? 11. Oh. And I was only at home one day. I was only at home for Saturday nights. So it was my island. And I thought maybe I deserved a break to just be allowed to be me. Anyway. Oh, the past. It's another country. I know they say that, but it's another country with where there are with lots of ditches and lots of terrifying encounters, lots of bits you never understand. Anyway, I'm obsessed with the power of the past, but it's a power that we give it, isn't it? And yet, I find solace in this stuff as well because it anchors us. I love the fact that this still exists from my childhood, and it's a reminder of this was the thing that I look forward to. This was the highlight of my week. I was bereft when Doctor Who wasn't on. I was excited about Doctor Who when it was coming on, and I still have that as an adult, looking forward to Doctor Who when it's on. But and the fact that it was new Doctor Who, and it was we knew nothing. I mean, as I said, I'd had the little preview in Doctor Who magazine telling us that it was going to be 3 episodes, but that was it. I didn't even know the Sontarans were going to be in it. Well done, Clinton Grain. You're scratching your face. It's a little actor's trick there for somebody working inside a mask that goes, well, a lesser actor would not think to do that because he's in a mask. He's going, no, this isn't a mask. This is my face, even though it's got kinks in places and it sort of looks like somebody's sucked the air out from underneath. So it's sort of like, the cheek bits. But he's an impressive size, Clinton Gray. He's very tall. He was a very magnificent fellow. He was a wonderful architect. I went to his flat, which he'd done himself, and it had gorgeous sort of limestone interiors on the or sandstone on the way up the stairs, which was sort of stone stairs in London. And then this gorgeous flat which had loads of sort of glass and white surfaces, and he had a very beautiful wife. And they were just classy people. Gave me a lovely cup of coffee. In his, I like the way he slaps him here. It really works. But he's trying to trick the Sontaran. It's great, and I love the idea of this diminutive pixie-like Doctor challenging this tall, imposing, as he sees, an honourable soldier, field marshal type. You can see a bit of hair sticking up there, but I don't think you see enough of their beards. And actually, I find the beard of Link's much better because it's like a wiry, sharp thing, whereas that seems sort of wispy hair. Great eye acting, brilliant eye acting here from Clinton Grain. He really bursts out of I like the eyebrows, but the beard, you don't really get enough of it. But as I say, I like the really sharp spikes that Lynx has as a beard. But that's all the Doctor trying to do. Well, he doesn't know if it will work, even if it does work, which it doesn't. But in challenging to a duel, that would at least get him free from his bonds, and then he could come up with another plan. I like that. That's the Doctor, pitching in to do a plan that he doesn't know what the end game of the plan is, but at least it will get him beyond where he is now. And I just love the idea of the little Doctor going, I'm challenging you to a duel, which is a ridiculous thing to do, but sensible under the circumstances. But a lovely juxtaposition between those two characters. But yeah, Clinton Grain, I thought was a man of great style. And he was tall and white-haired and very strong. And he died quite suddenly because I know he was going to do a signing for Phantom, and season 18 box set was coming out, and Jane, his wife, had to phone them and say, "I'm sorry, he's died." So must have been very sudden, and I liked him. And yeah, I think he was a member of the Society for Architects, and I can see why, because he'd lived next door, I think, and then he'd bought the flat next door that had been there'd been something about it, hadn't been able to buy it, was being eyed for redevelopment or something, and he finally got his hands on it, and as I say, did this beautiful job on it. Beautiful place. So what do we think of them being in Spain? I think it does give it a nice different hue. As I say, it wasn't great, massive news to me, but I'm not greatly geographical. But it does make a change from a gravel pit, I suppose. But also, I suppose it's slightly tainted because you know that John Nathan Turner was probably enjoying a jolly. And then there is something fun, isn't there, about two extravagant extraterrestrials sitting in a kitchen going through recipe books. And I do actually like, the idea that we suddenly become the prey, we become the food stuff, because that does shine a light on the way that we treat animals. That's because all we are is animals with ideas above our station. So suddenly, if we are game, as it were, or even worse, we're livestock. At least game lives in the wild. But if we're livestock for these alien creatures, this is a nice touch, I think. Does she put this in his mouth? Now, I'd always thought it was a fruity thing or a plum or something, but it's not. It's a piece of beetroot, isn't it? Which is different because he's actually eating it. He's giving the impression he's eating a lovely piece of fruit, but of course beetroot would take completely different. I love you, John Stratton. I've always liked his performance. I'm enjoying it even more now than I ever have before. This is the great thing about coming back to Doctor Who bit. Suddenly, you'll be watching it and you go, oh, that bit. I'm watching it for this bit now. And sometimes I've watched Who's and things I've really liked haven't quite worked for me that time round. And then I've gone, oh, I thought that person was better. I thought that monster was better, or that shit was better. And then the next time I watch it, I'll go, oh yeah, I remember I last watched this. I didn't like that performance as much. Oh no, actually, it's a really good performance. And I think I was a bit like that with the Sontaran masks, going, oh, I'm expecting not to like them, but actually, Clinton Grain's mask it works. I still maintain that they're not as good as previous. Well, the Invasion of Time ones, but I mean, he doesn't even have the same mask. Well, the same makeup between studios, but we'll do that when we do the Invasion of Time. And the Sontaran Experiment one had to be slightly compromised because Kevin Lindsay had been poorly, and it's still a decent mask, and it ties in with the Gollum idea, although that's actually the novel. Doesn't matter. What do we think of? Why am I talking to you? You're not going to be able to answer. Of Colin Baker's waistcoat. I do like the shirt with the checked lining, but no, it's still a bit. The trousers are still a bit much. They're quite high as well. Why has everybody got high trousers in this? That's the problem with braces, you see. I like braces. They're quite fun, but they do pull your trousers up a bit much. So they're in. Right. Poor old Perry has to go and put herself in the firing line. It's funny because if this was modern Doctor Who, they'd be almost crying now, going, "You're like nobody I've ever met before, but can you go? But we've both got to go and put ourselves in mortal danger." And they would make it like they were never going to see each other again. Whereas here, it's just like, you go and do that. I'll do this. This is the order of the day. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but and I love poor old Oscar being left there. You're just an out of work actor, mate. You're useless. And he's Shockeye is tarting himself up for a night on the town. I love that idea. Oh, we've got him and Troughton going to the restaurant in the next episode, which I'm sure I'm going to thoroughly enjoy. I wasn't wild about the androgam sort of makeup at the time. I think it's because of its colouring. I think it seemed a bit like, because Russ Abbott was doing his Scottish character. You could do that in comedy those days. It was just like, what's your character? It's a nationality. Is See You, Jimmy? I think anything sort of red eyebrowed, it was like you're doing a comical Scotsman. And even so, I think I slightly rejected considering what the plot is going to be. I wasn't as fond of the whole Androgam thing then as now. I was much more interested in, the Sontarans and the Time Lords and all of that. Yeah, it's the sucked in cheeks, I think, look a bit. There's nothing wrong with that as a concept. It's just the proportions are a bit odd. Or maybe it's just taste. Maybe I just don't. Yeah. But looking at them now, they're not as... Again, the beard should be spikier. Bristles, that's the word I was looking for. Bristles rather than fur. Fuck. He does it all so well, Troughton. And I think that was the other thing. I didn't want to see Troughton being an androgyne because I wanted to see Troughton being the second Doctor, who I love. And if I was, that would be a bit like watching an old Doctor Who if he's being the old Doctor Who, not if he's being an androgyne. I mean, it works having Clinton Green being very tall in terms of the dynamic of this story. I love the little mini chainsaw that he's got. That's a lovely little visual effects prop. Visual effects doing very well. That and the sticky pin things. And this, I do like this little bit of business where Anita gives the Doctor a kiss, and then Fraser, sorry, Jamie, oh, the line is very blurred. He wants a kiss and he doesn't get one. And of course, in real life, Jamie was a young Jacobite. He'd have been probably quite unreconstructed in his attitude towards young ladies. But I love what Fraser brings to it. The sort of the innocence and the stupidity is too harsh. The game simplicity, shall we say. Oh, even the way he sort of stands and leans in and strokes his neck. He's perfect, John Stratton. He's perfect. If I could choose him again, I would. He's like he's a piratical chef. But he's really he buys into the whole sort of sensual thing of it. And Jacqueline Pearce is good because she's got to convince you that she's got this sort of augmentation thing going on, but that also she has... Then we can cook her. That she's got the sort of vestiges of that savagery within her that she's fighting against. And her skill is very much that sort of, as I said before, I think sensual longing that, Servalan kind of had. You always got the impression that she was crying that she couldn't screw somebody who was now dead. It's that in space. It was sort of, yes. It was... yes, it was sort of thwarted science fiction sensuality. And none of this, it's all wonderful. The emotion that she brings to it, I think, is great. I think Servalan is superb. And again, I've thought that more as I've got older. I remember watching Blake Seven originally. I didn't quite get some. I knew she was the baddie, and I didn't like her. But of course, I didn't like her because she was the baddie. But I actually, on subsequent revisits to Dastari, Lawrence Payne crashes into the mobile chair there. I love his disgust at Shockeye. But on subsequent rewatches of Blake Seven, I've really admired what Jacqueline Pearce brings to Servalan. It's a truly great performance, and as I say, I had did I say last time I had the pleasure of working with her on a Big Finish, but she did sort of float in rather, and it was when somebody asked her a question, she sort of answered it as if she wasn't there. Perfectly nice, but I thought slightly on a different plane. And have you heard the commentary for this? She just spends the whole thing going, "Oh, did I, darling? I don't remember." I seem to recall that there's not a massive amount of insight, but an awful lot of charming vagary. I like that chair, actually. That's a wonderful contraption, isn't it? It's like a rocking chair on wheels. I love that. Madam. In the kitchen. Oh, it's glorious. That's a really shiny Bako foil top, isn't it? It's like kaleidoscopic Bako foil. Oh no! What's he got in his hat? He got sort of fishing flies in his hat. It's great. Loving it. Oh yeah, she gives a great sense. Yes, and the little hand movement. Oh boy, she's good. I love those two. They complement each other very well. But you get a shared shared history. Oh, and I love this bit. It's because Stike grabs Jamie, doesn't he? I love the confrontation. I don't think that's till next week. But I remember loving that bit. I do think Clinton Grain is great as Stike, even though he's too tall and has too many fingers. Does he have too many fingers? I think he does. How many fingers do the Sontarans have? I seem to recall they get more fingers as they go along as well. Again, it always seems a bit weird when we go, we've got these aliens and they have these specific things that are different about them. Yeah, well, let's get rid of those and make them a bit more the same. How many fingers have they got? Oh, no, they've got 3 fingers. Good. Is it that they don't have 3 fingers now? Can't remember. Don't give it the power it doesn't have, Toby. So this is nice. This is making use of the location and poor old Perry. Oh gosh, it's not long of a chase. I think I'd imagine maybe it was a bit like the Caves of Androzarani, where they seem to run around forever. She didn't get far. That's a terrific shot. Yes. And that's, of course, far longer than you would do that for, but he sustains it with his sort of slight wobbly, it's almost like DTs, it's almost like sort of he's got his nerves are slightly shot. You get the impression that he's drunk a lot. Shock eye. He's pickled. He sort of probably drinks alcoholic vinegar. Well, I enjoyed that after I think quite a slow starter. I think you're dying for it to get off the space station, and it takes a while. Interesting that the first episode you spend a lot of time with Patrick Troughton going, where's Colin Baker? It's his show. And then you're spending a lot of time with Colin Baker at the beginning of this one going, yeah, but actually where Patrick Troughton is where it's more interesting. So I can see it sort of, it didn't need to be the 3 episodes, but of course, because it's the one in Spain and because it's the one with Patrick Troughton, you want as long with those things as possible. Tony Burrow, Oscar-nominated designer. Have I talked about him? Maybe I'll talk about him next week. That's the problem when, as I say, I recorded episode 1, part 1, as the DVD menu reminds me, quite some time ago. So I enjoyed that. What are Matt's? Oh, I've got to choose my favourite things. My favourite things about that episode. Well, I do think there's lots of nice little props, and as Matt chose the manipulation of the Gumblejack and the little bits of business that the actors did, I'm not sure he won't be averse to picking on the tiny little bits of attention to detail. I love the little things that go into Fraser Hines's neck and stick, and then and it's, you know the trick of when the needle goes in, but actually when he pulled it out, it's like the needle retracted as well, and there's a lot of little mechanisms you have to do to make that work, and the stick as well, and it pulled at his neck. I thought that was a lovely tiny little bit of detail. I like the little the mini chainsaw, because it got a little it looked like a sort of Hath gun bit, the breathing apparatus that the Hath have, a sort of spirit level thing attached to it, and the wheelchair rocking chair business, the sort of old-fashioned wooden wheelchair. I like it. So little bits of proppage I liked very much. So should we call that visual effects, set decoration? Those bits I liked those. And what else do I? Is it Jamie's kiss? No, I think it's got to be the confrontation between Stike and the Doctor, because you've got a lot going on there. You've got Clinton Grain doing some great work, scratching his face, the eye acting that he does. He's behind a mask, but he's really selling it, and he seems to know where the camera is and how to get the best out of his performance, depending on where he's being shot from, which is not to be underestimated. And Troughton's gambit is great. I'm the Doctor, I'm going to do this. This isn't the best plan in the world, but it's the only one I've got, and I'm not quite sure even what it is, but I know I've got to get him to accept my challenge for a duel, which he doesn't do. And he does that wonderful, oh, well, that didn't work, did it? And also he says, oh, crumbs, not in that bit. But so, yeah, Troughton and Stike, Doctor and Stike, and the little visual effects, props, set decoration. What has Matt chosen?
So episode 2 then. Again, lots to pick. Really tricky to pick it down to 2 things, but love John Stratton as Shockeye. I bet he had immense fun playing that. And again, a bit of actor's business, this time with a rat, only he doesn't throw his prey back into the water this time. And Patrick Troughton as a second Doctor, obviously blissful to see him back in the role. I love the fact that he was okay with his Doctor being weak, scared, etc. And oh my goodness, oh my giddy aunt, oh crumbs, that sort of stuff. Wonderful.
Now, do you know what? I feel I get both of those because where I'm at a disadvantage, where if somebody chooses something before me, so if like it happened with Fusham in the Seeds of Death some time ago, somebody chooses something before me, I then can't choose it afterwards. But if I choose something in episode 1 that somebody then subsequently chooses, that's points for me that I've got in the bag. So I chose John Stratton last time, so I get a point for that. And I think it would have been straightforward to have gone and Patrick Troughton, but I picked out the O crumbs and the confrontation. I think I'm allowed both of those points. I think I stand so little chance of ever winning. I'm not going to judge. I'm not going to penalise myself for not getting exactly when actually we were celebrating those same things. Even though I honed in on the scene between him and Stike, but it was partially because of the oh crumbses and the fact that he was doing such a good job whilst being vulnerable that Matt alluded to, and because I think we were coming from the same place. And I try not to choose a character or an actor because I think that's so obvious for me to do it. It would be really boring because I would just go Patrick Troughton, John Stratton, Jacqueline Pearce, Lawrence Payne, James Saxon. Do you know what I mean? I could have chosen any of those things. So I tried to go off piste for me and actually choose a scene. But one of the main reasons was Troughton. So write in if you like. Write to the producer. He won't fire me because he's me. Write to the exec. He won't fire me because it's me. Write to the presenter. It's me. I'm in charge. I'm in charge of this place. Who's that? That's Peter Miles in Doctor and the Silurians. Oh, somebody has chosen that to do, but hasn't sent the video. That is the bit I'm going to choose for that. Is Dr. Lawrence's death scene in is it episode 7? I think it is. He dies in the last episode, which is just magnificent. Or is it episode 6? Does it matter? Yeah, no, I'm sure it's the last episode. I'm in charge of this. Are you going? Why am I talking about Doctor Who and the Silurians? Oh, because I can love Peter Miles and Dr. Lawrence right now. That's a great story. Stop talking about a different Doctor Who story. I like Doctor Who. I like this episode is the first episode of the Happy Times and Places I have recorded since the news that Russell T Davies is coming back to Doctor Who. And so I'm buoyant because actually through doing these, I've had the chance to see. And during lockdown with the tweet-alongs and stuff, I went back to a lot of Russell T Davies era Doctor Who that I hadn't watched for a good long time. And again, it was looking at the past. I was going, I used to get so cross about little bits of here and what I might think people would think of that. I loved it, but I used to get so furious about things that worried me or disappointed me, and a lot of things that worried me. I look back on now and go, why did I worry about that? Why madness? Because everything was so perilous. I think the idea that Doctor Who could be cancelled any minute, and because of course when this was on, when the Two Doctors was on, was pretty much when they announced that Doctor Who, the hiatus was going to happen, and Doctor Who was violent and unimaginative. And there's a lot of violence here. So yeah, was it during the broadcast of the Two Doctors it was announced? I think it may well have been. I will have to check and come back to you next week if I remember. You'll know anyway. You'll look it up, and I'll look it up and check and remind myself, and then I might not remember to tell you. Well, I can't do everything, but it was certainly around this time that Doctor Who was, so suddenly the thing that had been a constant, as I say, in an emotionally peripatetic childhood, where Saturday night was the anchor and the only certainty, and the only thing that was mine, apart from during this episode when I had to move my shoes, which was obviously such a moment that I can still remember it, and it looms large, and I still slightly resent it. But as I said to that young fan, don't bring your resentments with you. That's what gives them power. But isn't that? But looking at the past, looking at Russell T Davis's Doctor Who, which is so brilliant, reminding myself how brilliant it was, and how lucky we were. And I think, and I say, oh, we didn't appreciate it. We did, because I loved, and I looked forward to Doctor Who every week when it came back. It was a thrill. It was like being a kid again. So that's where the nostalgia is helpful, like being a kid again. I didn't mean to use that phrase, and that brings with it. And I was, as I say, childhood can be scary and frightening. And I looked at a kid in the park today looking for conkers, and he was so sort of gleeful, but I also thought it's so vulnerable, because those are the times when you're bullied as well. So you can be gleeful about a conker, but then crying because somebody said something cruel or unkind. So I think that's why childhood is such a draw, isn't it? It's because when we were perhaps slightly more in touch with our emotions, which is why you think of it as being, oh, I'm an excited child, but also that emotional response to Fleetwood Mac of, I found myself close to tears, really weirdly, because it reminded me of also a time when, emotions were perhaps rawer. But is that a better way to be than being sort of having your edges dulled by life and mortgages and having to worrying about shoes being in the hall, or what I've been doing today. It's a Sunday. I've been tidying the house because that's what grown-ups do. I put bleach around the toilet and thought, yeah, Toby, you're a grown-up. That's what grown-ups do. They do that. Grown-ups. You shouldn't still be getting that. That's at 47, going, yeah, I'm a grown-up because I put bleach around the rim of the toilet because I don't live with my mother anymore. So what am I talking about? I don't know. The past. Never mind Spain being another country. The past. Yeah. So maybe I was wrong about saying to that young lad. Well, no, I wasn't. The past is very, very powerful. But I guess you have to decide what you want to draw from it. And if you draw the things... And it wasn't an unhappiness when Fleetwood Mac made me cry. It was just the sort of profundity of the fact that we can still touch ourselves through time, if you like. I'm worried I'm sounding pretentious now, but I did. It was quite a moment, and I think that's part of the appeal of Doctor Who, is because it keeps us in touch with our childhood. But what's interesting about Russell coming back, it's got nothing to do with the Two Doctors, is that I wasn't a kid when Doctor Who came back, and yet I still had that excitement, and Doctor Who still did. That's what surprised me when Doctor Who came back. It still did what it had done to me when the Two Doctors was on. And this week, I think, has reminded me that it can still do it again. And it's always done it. Good old Doctor Who. So that was a bit tonally all over the place, wasn't it? I had a lot of fun. I think I got a bit pretentious. Certainly lots of unnecessarily rambling. But enough about the episode. The commentary was pretty much the same as well. But look, it is what it is. It's a man watching Doctor Who and saying what comes into his mind. And for better or worse, that man is me. There were 2 Doctors, so just be grateful there was only one of me watching part 2 of the 2 Doctors, or the episode where I had to move my shoes. And I got 2 points. So thanks very much for joining me for a happy time and a happy place. And let's do this all again in the next episode of The 2 Doctors. But for now, you fine fleshy beasts, goodbye. Thank you so much for listening to Happy Times and Places, presented by me, Toby Haydock, with my special guest, Matt Hayden, who is on Twitter at MattHayden65. Thanks to the patrons who support these podcasts, who include David, who I think wants to remain anonymous other than the Christian name, Jenny at Bluebox99, Paul Callington, Paul Cook, Peter Crocker, Rob Dawson, John Deere, Chris Dunford-Kelk, Chris Phone, Jason Gorman, Siobhan Galichon, Ian Key, Joe Llewellyn, Darren Mackay, Barry Platt, Mark Aldridge, Kit Allen, Sebastian April, Tilt Ariza, Simon Ash, Richard Alt, Lung Baramus Banks, James Blackett, Robin Bland, Kyle Bors, David Brodie, Nigel Bromley, Hugh Buchtman, and the 2 Anthony Carrolls. The music for this podcast is by Dave Gates, and the podcast artwork is by Dylan Patterson. If you would like to patronize the establishment where these podcasts are forged, you can do so at patreon.com/Toby Haydock, where I can guarantee you will not acidize your digestive juices. Tiers start from as little as £3 a month. I'm afraid we do not accept the 20 Narg note, but you get advance releases, bonus and exclusive material, and other little bits and bobs. If you sign up for a year, there's a £10 discount as well. And you can also, if you don't want to do a monthly subscription thing, which is what Patreon offers, you can just go to ko-fi.com/Toby Haydock and make a donation whenever you think I sound hungry. However, I know that financial assistance is not always possible. We live in difficult times, and some of you might need to buy a tank of petrol every now and again. So I'll tell you what you can do, though, that costs nothing. Go to iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts and just give these a 5-star review and a couple of lines of positive review, so a 5-star rating really, and the review, a couple of lines composed by yourself extolling the virtues of these things. That just really helps to increase the visibility, which in an ever-expanding marketplace on the internet, which seems to consist entirely of Doctor Who podcasts, really does help, and it means that people are more likely to listen to this stuff, which justifies my time in the cupboard away from my partner and children and civilization and hope and ambition and a career and any justification for the small amount of time I've spent on this planet. Thanks. And I'm a regular at the comedy night Excess Malarkey in Manchester, which is every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Some fantastic guests coming up. But we are also online on the first Sunday of every month, twitch.tv/Excess Malarkey. I introduce 3 of the finest comics from the circuit, and we do fun comedy stuff for free. There is, again, the donation option there, but it's free at the point of entry, and it's a comedy club that's been running for 24 years, so we must be doing something right. So if you still need to hear more of my voice, but actually don't want me to mention Doctor Who quite so much, although I do still mention Doctor Who a bit, then Excess Malarkey is at twitch.tv/Excess Malarkey, the first Sunday of every month at 8 p.m, and the shows remain online for 14 days after that. And there are even, we put clips and highlights up as well. So there's plenty there whenever you decide to frequent that channel. Or, as I say, the live show in Manchester, Excess Malarkey, every Tuesday, 8 p.m. And you can follow me on Twitter at Toby Haydock. And these podcasts have their own stream at Haydock Podcasts. I've also got a website, tobyhaydock.com, and there's a Facebook I hate the use of the word in reference to me, but it's the way things are done these days, fan page, or I think it's just a page, but you know the thing. It's my name and it says what I'm doing. Mwah. Captain Potter, you'd better warn your men. Things may happen.